Like carriages careening through its painstakingly recreated turn-of-the-century streets, the Alienist has traveled a rough road. Caleb Carr's best-selling 1994 historical crime novel and its protagonist, the pioneering proto-forensic psychologist Dr. Laszlo Kreisler, languished in development hell for decades before this long-awaited limited series finally arrived. Now it emerges onto the small screen as two related trends in television reach their apex: upscale adaptations of haute genre fare, The Handmaid's Tale, Game of Thrones, and prestige explorations of the mass-murdering mind, Mindhunter, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story. This presents the series with something of a dilemma. It must convincingly depict the attempt by Dr. Kreisler, played by the Spanish-German actor Daniel Bruhl, to catch a killer of young boys in 1896 New York City as something convincingly new, daring, and outstanding among a very crowded field of high-end period dramas. The series premiere is only partially up to the task. It introduces us to the title character, Dr. Kreisler, as he learns of the brutal murder and mutilation of a child prostitute in a city where police bang their nightsticks against lampposts to alert one another of a crime. Alienist, we learn, is a 19th-century term for doctors who studied mental health. Details like the nightstick banging, or the fantastic Foley art crunch of the snow beneath a beat cop's feet in the opening scene, lodge in the memory at least as much as the artfully staged gore we witness at the crime scene. The network's reported $5 million per episode budget works wonders, as TNT no doubt hoped it would for its first bona fide foray into the prestige TV scrum. The producer-director Jacob Verbruggen treats the Williamsburg Bridge, on which the child's corpse is discovered, like the Wall of West Eros, still under construction in 1896. The bridge is a colossal but liminal edifice that towers over the teeming hordes and CGI skyline, and it embodies the violable line between order and chaos. The sheer scope of this grimy, Gilded Age New York will stun viewers of other tri-state area period dramas like The Nick and Boardwalk Empire, which feel modest in comparison in geography, if not in quality. But the fin de siècle setting always feels a bit artificial, like the Epcot Center version of a foreign country. It doesn't help that nearly every character encountered by the leads, from a bawdy French madam to cops with names straight from the Dublin phone book, is a central casting stereotype. Even Teddy Roosevelt, depicted here during his stint as the New York City Police Commissioner, is reduced to a stock angry captain figure, furious at Chrysler and Company's refusal to play by the rules. Roosevelt's wooden dialogue does few favors for the talented actor Brian Garotti, who was so mercurial and menacing as an obsessed prohibition agent in Boardwalk a few years back. The familiarity of the place, time, crime, and cohort leaves the stars to do the heavy lifting. The square-jawed actor Luke Evans displays a blend of commitment and arch remove as the sexy but squeamish New York Times illustrator John Moore, Chrysler's friend and low-key comic foil. As Moore, Evans bears the brunt of the show's basic cable sex scene load thus far, which inventively balances the need to titillate with the need not to show certain body parts. His knack for high-end prostitutes and his unusual occupation make him an odd choice for an audience identification character. And yet that's undoubtedly what he is, displaying the shock and fear his more hardened colleagues can't. Or don't you represent the good that people want to believe is in all of us, the doctor tells him. That's why people like you more than they do me. So far, that seems about right. Moore's opposite on Chrysler's nascent team is Sarah Howard, Dakota Fanning, his wealthy childhood friend, and perhaps more, who has bucked convention by becoming the N.Y.P.D's first full-time female employee. Miss Howard, as she insists on being called during work hours, serves as secretary to Chrysler and Moore's rough-riding former Harvard classmate Roosevelt, a position that makes her a target for both condescension and sexual harassment from the force's bog-standard Irish flat feet. But it also grants her access to files that could help the doctor connect the recent murder to the unsolved abduction and killing of a pair of brother-sister twins several years earlier, which she hands over to Moore, on condition that she be kept in the loop of their investigation. Sarah's dialogue is overly mannered at times, but as the cast's most recognizable face, Fanning brings a steely intensity to the role when confronting her skeptical male colleagues. She becomes a much cooler customer when, at the end of the day, she sheds her painfully confining corset and lights up cigarette while considering the case. It's a combination of traits The Wire has trained us to recognize as good police, even if no one in Commissioner Roosevelt's department is prepared or willing to see it. With any luck, a canny cop show casting director will recognize it in Fanning. Playing the title character presents Brule with a tougher task. Dr. Chrysler spends his non-sleuthing hours dealing with the living, not the dead. His work with troubled and vulnerable patients' children in particular requires sensitivity, gentleness, and genuine care. As such, aloofness, arrogance and the other traits that typically define maverick masterminds like Chrysler would be out of character. In its way, that's a blessing. Do we really need to see the umpteenth knockoff of Sherlock Holmes or Dr. House? Indeed, Brule imbues the alienist with a plain-spoken dignity, even in the moments when his behavior is demanding or shocking by the standards of his day. But there's a reason you don't often see the phrase eminently reasonable visionary used to describe fictional detectives. To be fair, with all due respect to our fictional Times colleague, sexually magnetic crime-solving newspaper cartoonists are rarer still. Chrysler is so calm and so conscientious that he has a tendency to fade into the meticulously constructed background as a result. When he finally does something truly weird, delivering a concluding monologue about his need to become the killer in order to catch him to cut the child's throat myself, psychologically speaking the change is so sudden and stark that the lines land with a thud. The fact that serial killer procedurals from Manhunt to Mindhunter have painted their protagonists by pretty much these exact same numbers doesn't help either. It's true that the source material here predates the current surplus of unstable cop geniuses, but this adaptation of a 1994 book about an 1896 crime must still move and thrill us in 2018. Like the killer himself, who escapes Chrysler during a peculiar pursuit through an abandoned building after taunting him with a grisly trophy, the answer as to whether it will remains elusive for now.